The last resort. The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Federation hung suspended in the void, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of distant stars. Inside, representatives from 1,000 worlds sat in tense silence as High Counselor Vexare, their most ancient member, manipulated the holographic display with trembling fingers. The projection showed another solar system vanishing into darkness, the third this week. The void swarm has consumed the Centauri cluster, Vexare announced, her iridescent scales dulling with distress. 17 billion souls, gone. She paused, letting the weight of those words settle over the assembly. Our greatest weapons cannot penetrate their adaptive shields. Our fastest ships cannot outrun their pursuit. Our strongest telepaths cannot breach their hive mind. Ambassador Tal, a being of living energy contained within an environmental suit, pulsed with agitation. Then we are finished. The Federation will fall, just as the Mechanic Collective and the Star Empire fell before us. Perhaps not. The words came from Archivist Xena, who had remained silent until now. The small, gray-skinned alien rose from her seat, her large eyes reflecting the starlight. In my research through the ancient archives, I discovered references to a species that might be our salvation, if they still exist. The chamber erupted in murmurs as Xena approached the central platform. She interfaced with the holographic system, and a new image appeared, a blue-green planet orbiting a yellow star. Humanity, she said, her voice carrying across the chamber. They vanished from the galaxy over 3 centuries ago, but not before developing technologies that even we cannot fully comprehend. Myths and legends, scoffed Tal. Everyone knows the stories of the humans and their supposed mastery of quantum mechanics. They destroyed themselves in some great catastrophe. Xena's expression remained calm. That is what we believed. But I found something else. She adjusted the display, showing a series of coordinates scattered across the galaxy. Cryo-storage facilities, heavily shielded and hidden in the spaces between stars. The humans didn't destroy themselves, they went to sleep. The chamber fell silent again, but this time with a different quality. Hope, however faint, had entered the room. High Counselor Vexare leaned forward. Why would an entire species choose hibernation? According to the records I decoded, Xena explained, they had developed quantum manipulation technology that allowed them to bend the very fabric of reality. But it was dangerous, unpredictable. They couldn't control it fully. Rather than risk catastrophic failure, they chose to enter Cryo-Sleep until they could find a solution. And now we want to wake them. Tal's energy form flickered with concern. A species so dangerous they chose to remove themselves from the galaxy. We don't have a choice. Vexare's voice carried the weight of their situation. The void swarm will reach the core worlds within 2 standard months. Every weapon we've developed has failed. Every strategy we've attempted has crumbled. She turned to face the assembly. We need the impossible. We need the unpredictable. We need humanity. The debate raged for hours. Some council members argued that awakening humanity was too risky, that their quantum technologies might be more dangerous than the void swarm itself. Others insisted they had no alternative, better to risk everything on humanity than face certain extinction. Finally, Vexare called for a vote. The result was close, but the decision was made. They would awaken the humans. The first facility they located was hidden in an asteroid field at the edge of what had once been human space. The Federation's most advanced ships surrounded the station, their sensors probing the ancient structure. Inside, they found row upon row of cryopods, each containing a sleeping human. The medical team, led by Dr. RYX, a multi-limbed being specialized in xenobiology, carefully began the revival process on 2 pods they had identified as containing key individuals, a quantum physicist and a military commander. As the cryopods hummed to life, Xena stood watching, her heart racing. The archives had spoken of humanity's remarkable adaptability, their capacity for lateral thinking, their ability to achieve the impossible through sheer determination. But would these humans, awakening to a galaxy so different from the one they left, be willing to help? The first pod's cover slid open with a soft hiss. Inside lay a woman, her black hair streaked with silver, her eyes slowly opening to take in her surroundings. Dr. Sarah Chen, quantum physicist, one of humanity's brightest minds, was awakening after 3 centuries of sleep. In the pod beside her, Commander James Rivera began to stir, his military training evident in how quickly he moved to assess his surroundings despite his lengthy hibernation. Dr. Chen spoke first, her voice hoarse from centuries of disuse. "How long?" 327 standard years, Zena replied softly. "And we desperately need your help." Commander Rivera was already sitting up, his eyes scanning the room, taking in the alien forms around him. The quantum containment fields, did they hold? Yes, Zena assured them. Your failsafes worked perfectly. But now we face a threat that might be even greater than an uncontrolled quantum cascade. Dr. Chen and Commander Rivera exchanged looks, a silent communication passing between them. They had gone to sleep to protect the galaxy from their own dangerous discoveries. Now they were being awakened to use those same discoveries as weapons. "Tell us everything," Commander Rivera said, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to making impossible decisions. As Zena began to explain about the Void Swarm, she saw something spark in the human's eyes. Not fear, not uncertainty, but determination. The archives had been right about one thing: humans didn't back down from a challenge, no matter how overwhelming the odds. The awakening of humanity had begun. The question now was whether their legendary ingenuity and their dangerous quantum technologies would be enough to save a galaxy on the brink of extinction. Awakening the warriors. The Federation's medical bay hummed with activity as more cryopods were carefully transported from the ancient facility. Dr. Chen stood at a holographic terminal, her fingers dancing across the interface as she absorbed 3 centuries of scientific advancement. Despite her recent awakening, her mind worked with remarkable speed, bridging the gap between what humanity had known and what the galaxy had become. Their technology evolved differently than we predicted, she muttered, more to herself than to Commander Rivera, who stood watching the revival operations. They focused on biological computing while we pursued quantum mechanics. Interesting choice. Rivera's attention was fixed on a tactical display showing the Void Swarm's advance. How long until we can get our quantum systems operational? That's the problem. Chen pulled up a series of complex equations. Our containment protocols are still active. The fail-safes we put in place before going into Cryo-Sleep were designed to be virtually unbreakable. We need time to safely disengage them. Time was the one resource they didn't have. The holographic map showed the Void Swarm consuming another star system, its unified consciousness absorbing all knowledge and biomass it encountered. The Federation's greatest scientists estimated less than 60 days before it reached the core worlds. We need to wake more of our people, Rivera decided. Specifically, the quantum engineering team from Project Horizon. High Counselor Vexare, who had been silently observing the humans, stepped forward. Is that wise? Your own records indicate that Project Horizon's experiments nearly caused a rupture in space-time. Those same experiments might be our only chance against the swarm, Rivera countered. Sarah, can you locate their pods? Dr. Chen was already searching through the facility's database. Found them. Section 7, Pods 113 through 120. Dr. Marcus Wong, Dr. Aisha Patel, the whole team. As the revival process began for the Project Horizon scientists, Federation xenobiologists continued studying the awakened humans with fascination. The species' ability to adapt to their new reality defied all expectations. Where most beings would be overwhelmed by such a dramatic shift in time and circumstance, the humans seemed to draw energy from the challenge. Dr. Wong was the first of the new group to regain consciousness. His eyes snapped open, immediately alert. The containment fields. Holding, Chen assured him. But we need to break them down. Carefully this time. Wang's expression shifted from concern to curiosity as he took in the alien technology surrounding them. 300 years of scientific advancement to study. This should be interesting. Commander Rivera gathered the awakened humans in a secure briefing room. The Federation had provided them with all available data on the Void Swarm, and the Project Horizon team was already proposing theories and solutions. The swarm operates on a unified consciousness, Dr. Patel observed, studying the sensor readings. But our quantum technology operated on a different plane of existence entirely. They might not be able to adapt to something that doesn't follow the normal laws of physics. If we can get it working again, Wang added. The containment protocols are integrated into the quantum matrix itself. Dismantling them without causing a cascade will be like performing surgery on a subatomic level. Rivera paced the room, his military mind processing the tactical implications. How many of our weapon systems can we safely reactivate? The quantum torpedoes should be stable enough, Chen replied. But the reality distortion fields? Those were barely under control when we went into cryo-sleep. One mistake and we could tear a hole in the universe. The door slid open, and archivist Zena entered, carrying more data crystals. We found something in the facility's secure vault. Plans for something called Project Prometheus. Chen and Wang exchanged meaningful looks. We never got to test it, Chen explained. It was theoretical even by our standards, a way to use quantum mechanics to rewrite local reality. We designed it as a last resort, but the calculations showed it might be too dangerous even for a controlled test. And now? Rivera asked. Now we're facing an enemy that devours entire star systems. Chen's expression hardened. I'd say that qualifies as a situation requiring last resorts. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. More humans were awakened, each bringing specialized knowledge and skills. The Federation provided them with everything they needed, while carefully monitoring their progress. The aliens' mixture of hope and fear was palpable. They desperately needed humanity's help but remained wary of their potential for destruction. Dr. Chen and her team worked tirelessly to safely dismantle the quantum containment fields, while Commander Rivera began training Federation forces in human military tactics. The aliens were surprised by humanity's approach to warfare. Their strategies seemed to defy logic, emphasizing unpredictability and calculated risk-taking over conventional wisdom. Your species, Vexare observed, watching a combat simulation, appears to thrive on doing the impossible. We prefer to think of it as refusing to accept limitations, Rivera replied. Humanity's greatest achievements often came from attempting what everyone else considered impossible. As if to punctuate his words, an alarm blared through the station. The Void Swarm had accelerated its advance, consuming systems faster than predicted. They now had less than 40 days before it reached the core worlds. In the quantum laboratory, Dr. Chen looked up from her work, her eyes meeting Rivera's across the room. They both knew what this meant. They were running out of time to be careful. Soon they would have to choose between risking everything on an untested weapon or watching the galaxy fall to the swarm. The fate of civilization would rest on humanity's ability to do what they did best, achieve the impossible through sheer determination and the willingness to take risks that no other species would consider. Wake them all, Rivera ordered. Every human in cryo-sleep. If we're going to save this galaxy, we'll need every one of us. The awakening of humanity was about to enter its final phase, and the Void Swarm would soon learn why legends of human determination had survived 3 centuries of absence. The human element. The Federation's war room had transformed in the weeks since humanity's awakening. Holographic displays showed not only conventional tactical data but also strange quantum readings that most alien scientists could barely comprehend. Dr. Chen stood at the center of it all, surrounded by a team of human and Federation scientists, as she explained their plan. The Void Swarm adapts to conventional attacks because it operates within normal physical laws, she said, manipulating a hologram showing quantum probability waves. But our technology operates on a different level entirely. We don't just bend the rules, we rewrite them. The Federation scientists watched in fascination as she demonstrated a small-scale quantum manipulation, causing a test object to exist in multiple states simultaneously. 3 centuries of sleep hadn't dulled humanity's mastery of the impossible. The problem isn't just technical, Commander Rivera added, stepping forward. The swarm learns from every encounter. It absorbs knowledge, adapts its strategies. But it's never encountered human unpredictability. High Counselor Vexare's scales shifted color with concern. Your proposed tactics, they seem extraordinarily risky. Risk is our specialty, Rivera replied with a grim smile. The swarm expects logical responses, predictable strategies. We'll give them chaos instead. The first test of their combined approach came sooner than expected. A Void Swarm scout force entered a remote system, likely searching for new resources to consume. Instead, they found a waiting human fleet, recently recommissioned vessels pulled from hidden storage facilities across the galaxy. The Federation observers watched in amazement as the human ships executed maneuvers that seemed to defy both physics and logic. The vessels deliberately exposed apparent weaknesses, drawing the swarm into traps. When the swarm adapted to one tactic, the humans immediately switched to something entirely different. Impossible, Tal pulsed with astonishment. Their attack patterns have no discernible logic, yet they're devastatingly effective. Dr. Patel, monitoring the quantum readings, smiled. That's the point. Logic is predictable. Humanity learned long ago that sometimes the best strategy is to be deliberately unpredictable. The battle ended with the scout force in retreat, something the Federation had never witnessed before. The swarm, faced with an enemy it couldn't predict or adapt to, had chosen to withdraw rather than risk further losses. But the victory came with revelations that troubled the Federation leadership. The humans' quantum weapons had worked exactly as designed, creating localized reality distortions that the swarm couldn't counter. But the effects lingered, leaving behind patches of space where the normal laws of physics seemed optional at best. Now you understand, Dr. Chen said quietly to Vexare, watching the quantum disturbances on the monitors. This is why we chose to sleep. Our technology doesn't just bend reality, it breaks it. We needed time to learn control. And now? Vexare asked. Have you learned that control? Chen's expression was solemn. We're about to find out. Because what we're planning next makes these weapons look like toys. In the quantum laboratory, Project Prometheus was taking shape. The combined knowledge of humanity's brightest minds, enhanced by 3 centuries of Federation technological advancement, had created something unprecedented. A weapon that didn't just affect reality, it rewrote it completely. The theory is sound, Dr. Wong explained to the assembled Federation Council. We can create a quantum cascade that will rewrite the physical laws within a defined space. The Void Swarm operates as a unified consciousness, but it still has to obey the laws of physics. If we change those laws, you'll destroy them, Tal finished. But at what cost? The quantum disruptions from your smaller weapons already create lasting anomalies. What will happen when you unleash something of this magnitude? Commander Rivera stepped forward. That's why we're not targeting their main fleet. Not yet. We have a different approach in mind. The plan, when he laid it out, was quintessentially human. Instead of a direct confrontation, they would use the swarm's greatest strength, its unified consciousness, against it. A series of smaller strikes, each using different quantum technologies, would force the swarm to adapt in multiple ways simultaneously. Their adaptation is perfect, but rigid, Rivera explained. Once they modify themselves to counter a threat, that modification becomes part of their base structure. If we force them to adapt to too many contradictory things at once, they'll tear themselves apart, Dr. Chen finished. And then, when they're vulnerable and their adaptations are fighting each other, we hit them with Prometheus. The Federation Council chambers erupted in debate. The plan was audacious, arguably insane. It violated everything they knew about tactical warfare and scientific principles. It risked creating permanent damage to the fabric of spacetime itself. It was, in other words, perfectly human. As the council argued, Dr. Chen and Commander Rivera stood at a viewport, watching the distant stars. Somewhere out there, the void swarm was advancing, consuming everything in its path. They had less than 20 days before it reached the core worlds. "They're afraid," Rivera observed. "Not just of the swarm, but of us. Of what we might unleash." "They should be," Chen replied. "I'm afraid too. But sometimes the only way to save everything is to risk everything." Rivera nodded, his expression determined. "Then let's show them why humanity never lost a war. Not when it really mattered." The next phase was about to begin. The galaxy would either be saved by humanity's controlled insanity, or they would create something worse than the void swarm itself. But that was the human element, the willingness to roll the dice when the stakes were highest, to break all the rules when playing by them meant certain defeat. The Federation was about to learn why humanity's legend had endured for 3 centuries. They were about to witness what happened when humanity stopped holding back. Strike back. The quantum laboratory pulsed with energy as Dr. Chen made the final adjustments to Project Prometheus. Around her, reality itself seemed to waver, the air shimmering with possibilities that shouldn't exist in normal space. Her team worked with practiced precision, each movement carefully calculated. One mistake could tear a hole in the universe. "Quantum matrix stabilized," Dr. Wong announced, his fingers dancing across holographic controls. "Reality anchors are holding at 97%. Commander Rivera stood at the observation window, watching the preliminary tests with Federation military leaders. The small-scale demonstrations had already exceeded their expectations. Even contained within the lab's heavy shielding, the power readings were unprecedented. "The swarm has adapted to our initial attacks exactly as predicted," Rivera explained, pointing to tactical displays showing the enemy fleet's movements. "They've modified their core structure 17 different ways to counter our quantum weapons. Each adaptation is fighting against the others, creating structural weaknesses." High Counselor Vexaray's scales rippled with concern. "And if Project Prometheus fails? Then we'll have given them exactly what they want, a single, predictable threat to adapt to." Rivera's expression was grim. "But it won't fail. Because we're not going to use it the way they expect." The plan had evolved from their original concept. Instead of one massive strike, they would deploy multiple smaller devices, each programmed to rewrite reality in a slightly different way. The swarm would be forced to adapt to multiple conflicting versions of physics simultaneously. "Think of it like forcing someone to walk forward and backward at the same time," Dr. Chen explained to the Federation Council. "Their unified consciousness is their greatest strength, but it's also their weakness. They can't ignore any threat, they have to adapt to everything." The deployment began 3 days later. Human ships, now integrated with Federation technology, moved into position around the swarm's advance fleet. Each vessel carried a piece of Project Prometheus, carefully shielded to prevent premature activation. "Remember," Rivera's voice carried across all channels, "unpredictability is key. Don't fall into patterns. Don't give them time to analyze your movements. Hit fast, hit hard, and most importantly, hit weird." The battle began with a series of quantum torpedoes, each programmed to affect reality in a different way. Space itself seemed to twist and fold as the weapons detonated, creating pockets where physics misbehaved. The swarm's ships, trying to adapt to each new anomaly, began to show signs of stress. "It's working," Dr. Patel reported, monitoring the quantum readings. "Their adaptive systems are overloading. They're trying to be 17 different things at once." The swarm's response was immediate and violent. Their ships launched waves of counterattacks, but their usual perfect coordination was lacking. Different sections of their fleet tried different tactics, their unified consciousness struggling to find a single solution to the multiple contradictions they faced. Now, Rivera ordered. Deploy Prometheus. The human ships moved in perfect concert, each releasing their portion of the primary weapon. The devices linked together, forming a network that surrounded the swarm fleet. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then reality screamed. Space itself appeared to shatter like glass, fracturing into 1,000 different versions of itself. Within the affected zone, physics became more suggestion than law. The swarm ships, caught in the effect, tried to adapt but found themselves trying to exist in multiple contradictory states simultaneously. Containment fields at maximum, Chen reported, her voice tense. We can hold it for 3 minutes before risk of permanent spatial damage becomes critical. 3 minutes was all they needed. The swarm fleet, unable to maintain cohesion in the quantum chaos, began to break apart. Ships collided as they tried to occupy the same space in different realities. Their unified consciousness, unable to process the contradictions, started to fragment. But the swarm had one final surprise. As their fleet disintegrated, they launched a desperate counterattack. A massive energy pulse, drawn from their dying ships, surged toward the human fleet. Brace for impact. Rivera shouted. Divert all power to quantum shields. The pulse hit like a supernova, overwhelming shields and sending ships spinning. Warning alarms blared across every vessel as systems overloaded. On the flagship's bridge, Rivera held onto his console as reality itself seemed to buckle around them. Containment is failing. Chen's voice cut through the chaos. The quantum field is collapsing. Redirect power from life support. Rivera ordered. We hold this line no matter what. In the quantum laboratory, Dr. Chen and her team worked frantically to prevent a cascade failure that could tear a hole in spacetime. The equipment sparked and smoked as they pushed it beyond its limits, trying to contain the forces they'd unleashed. 15 seconds until critical failure, Wong announced, his hands flying over the controls. 10 seconds. 5. And then, suddenly, silence. The quantum storm subsided, leaving behind a graveyard of swarm ships floating in now normal space. Their unified consciousness had shattered, unable to maintain coherence in the face of humanity's controlled chaos. The first major battle against the Void Swarm had been won. But as the sensors showed the damage, reality fractures that would take years to heal, spaces where physics would never quite work the same way again, everyone understood the cost of victory. Status report, Rivera called out, surveying the aftermath. 60% of our fleet reporting damage, came the response. Quantum systems are offline. Reality fractures are stable but permanent. But sir, the swarm. They're not just defeated. They're broken. Their consciousness couldn't handle the contradictions. They'll never be able to reform their unified mind. In the quantum laboratory, Dr. Chen looked at the readings with a mixture of triumph and concern. They had proven that humanity's dangerous technology could save the galaxy. But they had also shown why they had chosen to go into cryo-sleep in the first place. The power to rewrite reality was a double-edged sword. They had won the battle, but the war was far from over. And the greatest challenge might not be defeating the remaining swarm forces, but learning to control the forces they had unleashed. The galaxy would never be the same. And humanity's awakening had only just begun.